Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement podcast. My name is Zachary Mallory, and I am the founder and the host of the Rise Above Justice Movement and the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast. Today, I'll give a viewer discretion is advised due to the nature of the topics that we will be discussing. Today, I am joined by Bonnie, who is Danielle Bell's sister. Bonnie, welcome to the Rise Above Justice Movement, the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, anytime that these stories are covered, we need to do it ethically. And there have been some journalists that have covered stories such as Danielle's, but also some other stories that have not done it in an ethical manner. And my intention is with this podcast to tell these stories with the ethics and with an ethical background because these stories deserve that kind of justice. With that being said, Bonnie, feel free to introduce yourself to our audience, walk us through who you are, your background, and then we will jump in and talk about Danielle Bell.
Yeah, so my name is Bonnie. I am Danielle Bell's oldest sis or older sister. There was 6 years between us, and I have taken on a family advocacy role of trying to get my sister's story out there because it's so horrendous. So with that being said, I'm here to talk about that today. And with that, my sister went missing September 28th, 2001 from Pensacola, Florida. And I believe that my mother trafficked her to two men who would eventually take part in my sister's disappearance and possible murder.
Yeah, and I know how incredibly difficult this is to share each time that you share it. And I want to say that I admire the way that you tell this story, and I've heard you tell this, and I had to reach out, and we were connected because of um, Melissa Twardowski and who is the younger sister of Deanna Merrifield, who also went missing in 1991 out of Texas, out of Killeen, Texas. And we covered that story, and she recommended that, I also talk with you. And then there's a couple others that she also recommended. And this story has stood out to me since the first time I heard it. And I thought your name sounded familiar whenever she first told me. And I was like, why does this name sound really familiar? So then I went to Google and I typed in Danielle Bell, and I was like, that's why. Because this story has been covered quite a bit, but I also feel that even with that, there's still parts that were edited out. You know what I mean? And I know you noticed that. I think anybody else who follows like true crime and knows about like storytelling, there have been parts that have been edited out that are crucial to understand. So, like you said, Danielle went missing on September 28th, 2001. And she also goes by the nickname of Danny. And she was last seen wearing a sky blue halter top with glitter in the fabric, a blue Tommy Hilfiger jacket, black pants, black dress shoes with a medium heel, a dolphin shaped ring, a heart shaped ring, a silver neck chain, diamond earrings, a gold ring set with an emerald and two diamonds, and a gold ring set with a ruby and a garnet. So, what led up to this specific part where it seems like she was like dressed, like she was headed to a party, right? So walk us through, a little bit about this journey and what led up to this. And you mentioned about your mother as well. So walk us through that experience for you.
So the night of September 28th, my sister got home from school around 3:30 p.m. with the intentions of going to stay with her friend Tiffany. And she had changed it and wanted to go stay with another friend. Her mom had told her no. She had to go stay with Tiffany. So she left her neighborhood with neighborhood kids to go to a park, and the park was about a mile or two north of where she was staying. But this was with, neighborhood kids. Like I knew these kids. They took her to this party after our mom had left to go attend a high school football game. At this party, she left from there with Alfredo Sanchez, Alex Sanchez, and Robert Bassett in a white Lincoln Town Car. And what we know about these suspects is what's really interesting. So, Alfredo Sanchez is currently serving 40 plus years in prison for lewd and lascivious behavior against my sister and another juvenile female. And so that's who she was with in this white Lincoln Town Car and her friend Tiffany. And they go to a party at Robert Bassett's house, who is the best friend of Alfredo Sanchez. At that party, there are there's people didn't confirm that Alfredo Sanchez was there. They have confirmed that Robert Bassett and his little brother, Alex Sanchez, were there. And at that party at Robert Bassett's house, um, around 1:30 in the morning, Danielle left again in the white Lincoln Town Car with Alex Sanchez headed to Tiffany's house. When they get to Tiffany's house, Danielle tells Tiffany, I don't want to, I'm going to go back to Robert's house. I don't want to stay here. And that's the last time anyone saw her. And so, leading up to her disappearance, which most of the family didn't know until after she went missing, she was being abused by Alfredo Sanchez. There were several reports that he had hit her at one point in time. She had a black eye. Um, she was gang raped by him and his friends, including Robert Bassett, all leading up to her disappearance. So these guys are not safe, right? And Danielle was not the only victim. Outside of the other charge that Alfredo Sanchez has, there are other young females at that time. When I say young females, I'm talking about teenage girls, children, young children. And that I've heard that he has also assaulted and doesn't have charges for. Same thing with Robert Bassett. Robert Bassett's currently in prison for several counts of assault. So I think it's two accounts of assault or simple battery, stalking, and he has a lengthy record of abuse towards women. And he gets out the end of this month, actually, November 28th. Um, so I can dive into how I found out I think my mom was trafficking my sister to these two guys, if you would like,
Yeah,
or we can continue.
I
Yeah.
think that that's a critical part in the story because this is the I'm gonna tell anybody who's listening to this. Whenever I heard this during Bonnie's tree interview, my mouth literally dropped because this is a part in the story that, and this is something that you don't really hear really often, right? I mean, there have been a lot of cases that, parents are involved, but not directly like this. And so, yes, feel free to jump into that part because I'm sure that everybody else's mouth's going to drop at this point too, because it raises some flags. And then I know you'll dive deeper into everything else. But yeah, I would love for you to talk about that part specifically and hit on this part very hard because this is a crucial part in the entire investigation.
Yeah. So, I said a minute ago that no one knew about this relationship between Alfredo Sanchez and my sister until she went missing. So, about 2 weeks before my sister went missing, I had taken her to go get pictures made on Pensacola Beach. And on the way back, she asked me, can you stop at a payphone so I can call my friends to come get me? This is 2001. I'm like, no. We didn't have a cell phone on us, but at that time, I was like, no, I'm taking you back where I got you. So we get to her house where she's living with our mom, and I hear her ask our mom, can Alfredo come over? Um, and she says yes. It's a Sunday night. It's like 7:30, 8 o'clock. I'm eating and I hear this. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't know who this dude is. Didn't think anything of it until about 30 minutes later, she walks inside with Alfredo Sanchez, Alex Sanchez, and then their cousin, Roel. I'm looking at these dudes. I'm 20 at the time. I'm like, this one dude is obviously older than me, and that was Alfredo Sanchez. He was 24. So I asked my mom, I'm like, what is she doing hanging out with these dudes? Because as soon as they get inside, she asked my mom, can we go for a ride? And my mom's like, yeah. And I lose my shit basically. And I'm like, hey, what is she doing hanging out with these guys? They're older than I am. My mom tells me, oh, he's cool. Alfredo's cool. And of course, it upsets my sister because she's 14 at this time, thinking she's in a relationship with this dude. I didn't even know that. It was a mess, right? So I left. That was the last time I saw my sister. So I didn't find out she went missing until Monday, October 1st. That was the same day that myself, and my stepdad, Danielle's dad, found out that she had been involved with Alfredo Sanchez. And he told her that if she had been sexually involved with him, told our mom that she thought she was pregnant. And she reported to our mom that Alfredo Sanchez said he would kill her if she told anybody. And I'm putting it together at the time. I'm like, this is the same dude that you were letting her hang out with 2 weeks ago, right? Like this shit isn't adding up. So, in the subsequent weeks after my sister went missing, rumors started coming in, and I had heard from several people that my mom was involved in prostitution and that she had been pimping my sister out. At that time, there was not enough evidence to for me to believe that to be true, and I didn't want to believe that that is something that my mother, who I knew was an addict, that she would stoop that low, right? Like that she would go that low in life. So in 2019, my mom had a meth addiction. And there were periods of time throughout after Danielle went missing that I would have her around. She would exhibit behaviors of being strung out again. I'd cut her off. 2019, and it was one of those situations where I hadn't talked to her in years because she had been so strung out. So I get a phone call that she had been prostituting on one side of town and had been in contact with somebody with HIV and that she needed to get tested. Then my uncle gets a phone call that she had put him down as a reference for renting a U-Haul truck, but she hadn't brought it back. Well, we start getting more phone calls because we're trying to find her, right? So we make some phone calls looking for her. We get some other phone calls, and I get a location, which is the Queen Mary Inn on Davis Highway, which is a seedy rent by the hour motel, which wasn't far from my house. So I drive, and I sit in the parking lot, and who do I see walking up? Strung out. My mother. So I go to a trusted authority who had done some searches for my sister and said, hey, she's at this hotel. I'm getting rumors that she's prostituting. What's up? Like, do you know, like, what can we do? So he takes her picture to the front desk of the motel and they say, yeah, we kicked her out because she had had so many men in and out. The lady across from her complained. They kicked her out. And so at that time, I started talking to more people, and there were multiple people that witnessed drug deals between my mom and Alfredo leading up to my sister's disappearance. And so it is true that I believe that she was trafficking her to Alfredo Sanchez, or at a minimum, turning a blind eye those weeks leading up to her disappearance. Because if you also take into, she says Danielle told her she was pregnant 2 to 3 weeks before she went missing. Well, it was a little less than 2 weeks that I saw Alfredo Sanchez over there. It didn't add up.
And, sitting here listening to you tell this story, it paints a picture, right? And like anybody who's like invested in true crime like myself and like these stories, these are not stories that you just see on TV, right? These are like real ass stories that happen every single day. And we need to recognize that, but also share them in an ethical way. And again, I admire the way that you share this story. So I want to dive in really quickly and talk about some like extracurricular and like hobbies that Danielle, was really involved in, including but not limited to like the cheerleading for a little league football team when she was only 4 or 5. She attended Tate High School and was a cheerleader. She wanted to be a lawyer for children with disabilities. And there was a point in time where she wanted to also be a veterinarian. She also loved to color. And then you also stated, like in this research document, that Danielle could be very sassy. So, walk us through a little bit about growing up with Danielle and what like her personality was like before all of this transpired with Alfredo. And yeah, walk us like paint that picture for us for a second. I know that this is a very painful part to do. So feel free to say, no, we're not fucking talking about this, but I know you're an open book and
Yeah.
walk us, kind of paint that picture for us a little bit, and then we'll dive more into like the disappearance and things like that too.
Yeah. So yeah, Danielle was a really actually happy, vibrant kid. She was sassy, very sassy. She and I shared a room for our entire, well, ever since she came around, since the time I was 6. I remember the day she was born, I wanted her to be a boy, so I didn't have to be the one to share a room with her. So there was that. But she was, you know, very happy. She was a happy kid. She also was very outgoing and playful. She would, by the time she was probably 10 and I was 16 and driving, she was with me a lot. She would go to my friends' houses with me. She and I went to the beach often, even up to the time when right before she went missing. I mean, she was with me at least once a week. She was with my friends. Like I have several really good friends. I'm still friends with them to this day that she would hang out with. I mean, they were like her other big sisters, and they would come and get her and just check in on her. And so, she was outgoing, very extroverted. One of the ways I like to describe the differences between her and I is the show Daria. It was on in the 1990s. And she used to tell me, Bonnie, you're Daria, I'm Quinn. And if you know the show, Daria is like this very dark, kind of cynical teenager, and Quinn's the outgoing cheerleader one. And that is definitely the differences between Danielle and I. But we got along great. I mean, other than just sisterly stuff, like she used to take all my clothes, used to tick me off. So I think I would add to that, her sass. She would, when we would like have, I would make her clean her side of the room and she would shove everything underneath the bed, which drove me crazy. So one time I just took tape down the middle of the room and made her just stay on one side. And I would do stuff like that. I was definitely the older sister for sure. But she didn't put up with my crap. She let me know exactly what she thought about it.
Danielle reminds me of myself whenever I was a younger child, and my mom would tell me to go clean. And I would literally take everything that's on top of the bed or everything and just like throw it underneath. Not thinking that she's gonna go and like look at it. She did. And then she was always like, I told you to clean this goddamn room. And she just, she just started going off. And there was a point in time where there was so much stuff in my room that you literally could not walk around in there. And it was so disgusting. And I was in elementary school at that time, and my room was literally like a disaster. And coming to find out, we actually had baby mice that were actually hanging out in my room just underneath all the rubble. That's how bad it got.
No.
It was so incredibly disgusting. And ever since then, and I think I picked up on like my mom's like OCD because, she has to have everything organized, it has to be clean, it has to be a certain way. And if it's not, if one thing is moved, she knows. She knows if something is out of place. She absolutely knows. So it kind of sounds like Danielle's a lot like me. Um,
Yeah.
so is there any like is there any way that how she actually like met Alfredo? Because she was 13 whenever she met Alfredo. And that was
Yeah.
in the spring of 2001. How did you already talk about this part? I'm trying to think back to the beginning of this
No,
conversation,
I
but
didn't. I
is
didn't.
there, how did she meet Alfredo? Was it through another friend? Was it through somebody else? Is there any idea on that part? I know, I think she met her through a friend, right? Or met him through
Ye-
a friend.
Yeah, so she was in eighth grade and she met him at that time from another friend of hers that was in the eighth grade and was dating Alfredo's cousin, Roel, who was what, 20, 21 at the time. So both of them liked younger women or younger, not women.
And
I hate that
then,
I just said that. Younger
and,
teenagers.
and then your mom stated that she knew Alfredo. She bought her drugs from him. And Alfredo also worked in construction and had a record dating back to when he was 16. Um, as a 24-year-old, he was also known for often having young girls aged 14 to 16 around him and his friends. He would supply them with drugs and alcohol. And that was when this is okay. I'm going to tie in a very pertinent thing because of the specific part that I'm getting ready to state. Shout out to Haley Gray, by the way, for this research document. And
Yes.
anybody who's out there, if you have a story that you need investigated, I highly recommend reaching out to Haley Gray because she does such a phenomenal job on this research and it helps paint an entire picture. So shout out to Haley. Haley's worked with a couple other families that I am also connected to that I'll be sharing their stories very soon. But Haley does a phenomenal job with this research, and it makes it so easy to tell these stories because their research, they have sources on everything, it has data, it has everything. Haley is a gem, and I know has helped so many families. So I just want to give a really quick plug into Haley Gray research right there because everybody needs to know about her. Um, he was quote unquote and stating that Danielle consented to having sex with Alfredo, but she's 14 years old. Okay. That is literally like Megyn Kelly stating that, oh, Jeffrey Epstein, and like, oh my God, Bonnie, have you saw this, like the recent headlines on this? I know
Yes.
it's literally fucking insane. Like a 14-year-old cannot consent, y'all. A 14-year-old cannot consent. And 14 is not quote unquote barely legal. No, we know that Jeffrey Epstein had a type. We know he had an age range. If you were outside of that age range, he wasn't interested in you. Now, that's exactly what this kind of reminds me of. I'm sorry to paint that into that, but it's true because the same thing has been said by numerous predators. Well, they consented. No, a fucking minor cannot consent. If they cannot enlist into the military or sign their own medical documents, they cannot consent. Okay. That like point blank. And that's what this directly goes down to. Now, oh my God, Bonnie, this case like just drives me up a wall. And I know if it does it to me, I know what it's got to do to you every time you tell the story. But in July of that year, Danielle turned 14. She continued seeing Alfredo. And according to your mom, she didn't know Danielle and Alfredo were dating. Danielle told her she was Alfredo's child's babysitter.
Yep. That's what she told me like that night that I got into it with them less than 2 weeks before she went missing, that Alfredo, she babysat for him. Yeah, that's what she
And
said.
in early to mid September, Danielle told your mom that she thought she was pregnant with Alfredo Sanchez's baby. And your mom also said Danielle had told her that Alfredo threatened to kill her, which I remember you mentioning about this just a little bit ago. And there was a doctor's appointment that was scheduled for Danielle, but went missing before it could happen.
Yes.
And did you know anything about that doctor's appointment, or did you know anything about specifically about Danielle potentially being pregnant?
Yeah, so I didn't find out. So she went missing on Friday, September 28th. I didn't find out
Mhm.
about it until October 1st, which was Monday morning. And the only reason that I even found out my sister was missing is because I called Monday morning
Mhm.
and my mom got on the phone hysterical. And I just
Mhm.
called to see what she was up to because I was off that afternoon and was going to see what she was doing, like what my sister's plans were. And that's when I found out she went missing. And then I didn't find out until I showed up at the house, like, because we had a search crew going on at that point, that she thought she was pregnant. And it was same day my stepdad, Danielle's dad, found out.
What was his reaction to this? What was his reaction to all of this?
Hmm.
Yes, I have heard him. I believe he did a interview or something that I heard him kind of share what
Yeah.
he was thinking. And but I want to paint that picture about from a dad's perspective because this oftentimes is left out of that conversation. Yeah,
Yeah, it is.
whenever I think of a dad's perspective, I think of Gabby Petito's dad, Joe, and what he's doing now to keep her spirit alive and helping other countless families. I think about Joe Petito is somebody that I kind of like reference a lot whenever it comes to dads turning their rage into action. But what was your dad's reaction to all of this? Did he say anything to your mom or anything like that?
Um, Disappointment.
Mhm.
He he wasn't the one that chose violence when we found out. Let me just say that. Um, he was disappointed, he was sad, he was shocked. Um, he stayed focused on finding my sister. He That was his reaction. I mean, he did searches. He was on the ground basically.
Mhm.
And he and I really band together at that time. Um, the moment that we found out, I can tell you what my reaction was and where it was. We were at my uncle's house, and it was at the end of the day that Monday after we had been searching. So my sister went missing on Friday. My mom didn't call the police until Sunday, and she didn't call him until Sunday. She called him first and said, "Hey, Danielle's missing. Should I call the police?" And he was like, "What do you mean? Yeah, you should call the police." So he goes out looking for her. This is later on Sunday. And so um also Alfredo's cousin and brother showed up and tried telling us that they were also worried about her and looking for her. And he asked, "Who are these people?" And my mom said they're Danielle's friends. And he said, "Danielle doesn't have friends that old like that. What are you talking about?" So in the moment that we found out, we were at my uncle's house, and he had she was sitting in the kitchen at the bar in a chair. I was on the other side of it. My stepdad was in the living room. My uncle's best friend was there. And my mom just starts telling us about the situation with Alfredo, Danielle coming to her, telling her that she thought she was pregnant. He had threatened to kill her and that she had made a doctor's appointment. And she was just crying at this time. And that's when my stepdad, the look of just fear, disappointment, all of those things I saw on his face. I I tried to attack my mother that day. I don't talk a lot about this, but I was like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? Like this, what are you talking about?" And so I left. I didn't do anything that I shouldn't have done. I didn't put my hands on her, but I did try to. I tried to come across the kitchen island at her. And my uncle's best friend, who had I had known since I was a child, picked me up, sat me outside the door, and said, "Now it's not the time. You need to go home. You need to get flyers, do whatever you need to do." So that's what I did. I had already had my friends making flyers. My friends had gone around and gotten either donations for flyers or had them printed themselves. So I spent the next couple of weeks hanging flyers on every gas station, every telephone pole, every retail store that I could find. And within that time period, I watched my stepdad age in a way I still can't quite tell you. I mean, he was devastated, absolutely devastated. So that was kind of the reaction that we both had. We were shocked, really.
And that's to be expected, right? And
Are you
I,
laughing at me?
I
I'm like,
couldn't help but cackle whenever you said he wasn't the one that chose violence that day. I'm sorry, it just got me because it's like I'm imagining this in my head. It's kind of like I have like a very like photographic memory, and I can kind of like see things like as it's playing out, as like being told something. And oh God, I'm sorry, I couldn't control myself on that part,
I
but
laugh at, I mean, listen, you got to find the humor in this.
yes, it will drive you absolutely fucking crazy if you don't.
Right.
So in 2004, the Class Kids National Search Center teamed up with, is it Escambia? Is that how you say it?
Yep, Ascamia.
County Sheriff's County to assist in searching and raising awareness for local missing children, including Danielle. In April 2004, a billboard about Danielle's disappearance was put up at the intersection of Texar Drive and Palafox Street in Pensacola. Over several weekends in June 2004, over 300 people gathered to search for Danielle. This included trained search and rescue volunteers from Louisiana, Alabama, and other parts of Florida, as well as 9 local, state, and national agencies. At this point, they were searching for her body. The search area was a 2-mile radius around the home of Robert Bassett, where she was last seen. And then there was a quote in Pensacola News Journal from Susan, and quote, I want my daughter's body found. I want to bring her home. It's the closure I need. So walk us through, what were you also involved in, going through and doing the search and rescue? Like, what was that experience like for you if you were a part of it?
Um, so the early searches that we did, like 2001, right after she went missing, were more like
Mhm.
localized. I did
Mhm.
those. I did the ones in 2004 with class kids, and to be honest with you, it was too much for me
Mhm.
to handle back then.
Mhm.
It sent me over the edge. I remember, you know, doing the ground searches and very thick brush and the dogs hitting on a couple of spots and water, and it was surreal at that time. And so it was just a lot, and it was
Mhm.
also when we started to get some movement with the sheriff's department because they had gotten a new detective. So there at that time there was a lot of efforts put into the case.
Mhm. And then Nancy Grace actually covered the story back then too, right? Or like sometime around in like that time frame.
So it was the only piece of national coverage that we had ever gotten, and it was like 30 seconds where she put her flyer up,
Mhm.
and just talked about her disappearance real briefly. Other than that, we had only had like local coverage, but it never made like national headlines or anything like that.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think that was?
9 times out of 10, it's the sheriff's department or the local authorities that are working these cases that has to kind of push for that.
Mhm.
And I think along with the fact that they first reported her as a runaway,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
had a lot to do with why she didn't get that national coverage. I also think that she came from a lower socioeconomic status. Her mother was a sex worker. I believe the sheriff's department knew that at the time, and I can explain that too. But I think that she didn't get it because of those reasons. So that's one reason why I've pushed so hard the past couple of years and we have had so much coverage is because I put in the work. I mean, I don't want to take the credit for all of that because there are creators that have helped. But I honestly believe that, 5 years ago when I talked to the Vanish podcast, they didn't want to report about my mom possibly trafficking my sister. So that's when I got on social media and basically said, hey, this is what I know to be true. I can only go where the facts lead me. And so if you're not going to report that fact or let me say that, I don't want to work with you.
Yeah, no,
And
100%. And because it's a
and
critical part of this entire story.
right. And so it was TikTok video after TikTok video, podcast creator after podcast creator, letting me say what I know to be true, what the facts have shown me, that I was able to get on News Nation earlier this year and say that. And the same thing with Nancy Grace when that comes out. And if it weren't for that, I don't think my sister's entire story would have gotten told. And that was my whole point, because the world deserves to know that a 14-year-old girl was trafficked by her mother and then murdered. I mean, we deserve to know that story.
And let's also fast forward because there's another critical part of the story that I found to be absolutely critical, and it also kind of paints the picture. So in 2012 slash 2013, you ended up losing your patience with your mother. And during a news interview, you stated or that you noticed that Susan was changing dates and other details about Danielle's story. What was this pivotal moment for you that kind of helped you recognize that, okay, something is off? And it makes you kind of like scratch your head and say, what? Like, you're changing dates, you're changing details about the story. Why?
Yeah, we were in the class kids, um, which is now called to rescue, the guy that used to be the executive director. I think they
Mhm.
had transitioned to called to rescue, which his name's Brad Dennis. He's an amazing human. But anyways, we were sitting there and the news media locally was interviewing my mom, and her story changed right there in the middle of that interview. And I I don't know, something in me was like, what the hell? Like this is different than what you were saying a couple of years ago. And it was the dates, like with Alfredo and all of that, right? And it just clicked. I was like, why do you keep changing your story? And I just walked out of the room. Um, and so that was, I was frustrated at that point. I had had enough of her inconsistencies. And that's when I first had started thinking about like doing podcasts, and she didn't want me to do them. She didn't want me to talk to the media. She didn't want me to say anything. And that's when I had first started thinking about doing podcast, getting online and telling my sister's story. So I got on Facebook and I was more active there for a while. Um, but basically, I decided at that point that she was never going to tell my sister's story the way that it needed to be told. She was going to lie about it.
Because she was complicit.
Right.
And I've come to realize that as I sit here and listen to the story, and hearing you talk about your mom, and I think anybody who's going to be listening to this would be like, huh? It's definitely
Right.
it raises all those flags. And then, shortly after that, you started looking into Danielle's case yourself. And there was a point in time that you realized how little the police had done to initially help find Danielle. And, this reminds, again, kind of going back, this reminds me of Deanna Merrifield's story as well, where she went
Yeah.
missing in 1991, but wasn't until 2007 because initially it was reported as a runaway. And there's a lot of connecting pieces between these two stories, right? And there's a common thing: injustice in police. There's a common denominator here. So whenever you started doing the search for yourself, what was that process like for you, and what did you kind of like uncover because you essentially did a detective's job without being a detective, and you did it more effectively, and you've actually found out a lot more things than they ever did, right? So walk us through that journey for you a little bit.
Oh God. So, so whenever okay, so I was I was a later in life college graduate. I was 2011 or 12. I decided to sit down and read all of the files that were housed within Class Kids that Brad Dennis and his team had gotten. And so during that time, I had read more about the rumors of prostitution for my mom and that she had been trafficking my sister, so that my sister was also, you know, involved in it. And I basically just kept that in the back of my mind. Then the media interview happened where she was changing her story. So from that point and me posting online, people would reach out to me with things. And one time I had a report that someone had said they were there the night my sister was murdered. So I tracked that lead down because I gave it to the police and they didn't follow up with it. Well, I tracked it down and I could verify that it was a lie. It was someone that was strung out, looking for attention, etc. Which happens, right? And you have to be able to discern them. I hate to say that or discredit somebody because of that, but there is it's a thing. So that was one lead that they kept telling me, "Oh, we can't find the girl." And I just showed up at her house. She was sitting outside in her garage. I talked to her. I could tell you right away that it was someone just BSing. Um, and so it just progressively got to the point to where when people would reach out to me, I'd look into the lead, verify it. Um, I went to school, my undergrad's legal studies, because I wanted to understand how the system worked and be able to use those skills in my sister's case. So I think that's been helpful for me. But at the end of the day, it's really just been about talking to people and drawing the lines. If someone, I mean, when there's multiple people that are telling me that they were raped by Alfredo Sanchez and Robert Bassett when they were teenagers, well, I'm going to draw the conclusion that they're rapists, even though one of them hasn't been charged with it, right? Like, that's kind of how I've put it all together is consistent stories that other people have told me. And you'd be surprised at the people that will talk. Um, Even though if they want to remain anonymous, there are stories that women have told me about these guys that I will take to my grave, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. And thinking about like how you have utilized social media, what has like social media been like for you? Because oftentimes a lot of these stories, as you stated, are not covered in national media. And if they are, then you have to like literally do that groundwork yourself. And even then, like these stories are still so watered down that it doesn't paint the whole entire picture. So what has been your experience on social media like, searching for, context clues and like, anybody talking? Because I'm sure you probably do the same thing that I do. If I'm looking into a case, I go on social media, go to the search bar, type in that person's name, and look at every single post that there was and read the comments. Do you like that kind of like a detective work? And just kind of like look and see like if anybody's talking about it. So have you done anything like that or anything similar?
So, sure, when there's either a local media push, when there's a local media push or a national media push, the most relevant social media comments I get are on Facebook, and it's from the people in the local area. So that's where I'm really honed in on, you know, the receiving of information because that seems to be the place where people are talking about it. I've had the most success on connecting with creators and national news organizations and followers on TikTok. So I've built a real solid like advocacy community over there. So there's two purposes for that. When I'm looking at these leads, if I think it's viable, I'll pull that person like, hey, let's talk through DMs, and then I'll get on the phone with them. So when I'm looking to decipher like what is a comment or a lead that's relevant, I'm looking for, does it match what we already know to be true? We have a timeline of events that have been verified um the night she went missing. So if someone has something to like they have identified, some type of connection between that, then I'll see that as a lead. Um, or even if they've reported that they've had just an experience with Robert Bassett, I've gone and like people are like, yeah, Robert Bassett did this to me. Partly why he's in jail. Um, I'll just research it first, like to make sure that this person is telling me the truth, and then I can pull a county record of his arrest for it, and verify it. And I talk to those people. So I'm real careful not to just take somebody's word for it because there are a lot of nutcases out there. I'm not even gonna lie. I think in the missing person community, we say, even if you have the smallest bit of information, we want to hear about it. Well, I've gotten to the point where, I mean, unless it's relevant, I don't really care because I've had people send me pictures of clothing in the woods, that doesn't even match the description of her clothing, right? Like, I'm like, what? So I think that you have to be prepared in a lot of different ways, emotionally, mentally, if you decide to do it that way, if you decide to advocate that way.
And also
And
be very
so,
skeptical of people too.
right, right, right. I mean, that's the thing. So that's why I mean, I get frustrated with people sometimes because they'll hone in. Like when the night on September 28th this year, I did a series of posts of the timeline of
Mhm.
the night leading up to it. And I mentioned Tiffany, who was a 15-year-old girl that was in the car with my sister and at the party at Robert Bassett's, who's also a victim of Robert's. Okay. I mentioned her and everybody honed in on her. Like, I mean, the things that they were saying about her. I'm like, are you serious? You're gonna target this 15-year-old girl that I haven't really talked about here online because I didn't want you to attack her, and then you fuckers do the thing that I thought you were gonna do anyways once I do. You know what I'm saying? So like things like that are really frustrating because women tend to get blamed for everything, but I don't mind calling them out too, because I think that sometimes people need to be corrected. And we need to remember that when a victim speaks, that's who we're worried about protecting. Why aren't we honed in on these guys that were 20, 24 years old and hanging around these 15, 14-year-old girls, right? Like, get it right, or I'm going to set it right for you. That's my take on it.
Yes. Okay. Now I'm sitting here and I'm like, yeah, let's go, Bonnie. Right? I'm like your biggest cheerleader right now. But speaking of which, and speaking of Roberts, okay, so yeah, and speaking of like social media, and I know that you have faced a lot of harassment from people thought to be involved in Danielle's disappearance. At one point, you received a text message. I know this is a part that kind of like makes me like, mm, it pisses me off, but I think this is a critical part. Are you okay if I talk about this? You know what part this
Oh,
is?
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So, as stated, you faced a lot of harassment and still are continuously facing harassment from the people that are thought to be involved in Danielle's disappearance. At one point, you received a text and it has screenshot comments from a Facebook group where Robert was harassing a young woman. You told that someone saw his name and they asked, "What did you do with that white girl, Danielle Bell?" And he responded, quote, "I put her in the hog pen where you belong."
Yep.
So
Mhm.
you also mentioned that he made that statement a couple times to a few different people, and that screenshot put it up. You had put that screenshot up on social media, and he got angry every time that you put his name in the media. Walk us through for a second, like whenever you received this screenshot, what went through your mind? And I'm envisioning, and I haven't known you like a super long time, right? But we've talked enough to where I know a little bit about your personality because you probably would have said the same damn thing that I did, and I know that. What was your reaction to this specifically?
Killer always tells on himself. And secondly, which hog pen, Robert? Which hog pen is she in? That's my reaction. Secondly, like his ego's gotten too big and it needs to be corrected. I mean, if you think it's okay to just go around saying that you put somebody in a hog pen and then when the police call you and ask you about it and you tell them, "Oh, it was a joke." What? That really that funny to you?
And this isn't necessarily something that you would joke about, right? I have to agree with you that every accusation is a confession. And I've come to realize that, like looking at the Jeffrey Epstein cases and looking at like other cases like this, like every accusation is a confession. And
Yeah.
that sounds exactly like this too. And you mentioned about like which hog pin. Has he been known to have multiple, or what's up with that specific part?
So the hog pen situation, this post has been almost over a decade ago.
Mhm,
It's been over a decade.
mhm.
And I did report this to the police and, they called him. They couldn't bring him in for questioning at that
Of
time because
course.
they said he refused. I was like, yeah, I don't think you're trying hard enough. But I've been trying to figure out which hog pen he's talking about. And it was right after the News Nation interview or airing February of this year that I was talking to one of the other victims of theirs, and she
Mhm.
said, I said, yeah, we were talking about the hog pen post. She's like, oh yeah, you mean Foster's Hogs? And I'm like, what are you talking about, Foster's Hogs? She's like, oh yeah, that's right down the road from Robert's house. So I
Mhm.
get to looking into this location, and it was closed down in the early 2000s. It was a like a feed store, plus they had livestock on it. And rumor has it that they used to hire the local crackheads to work at this place, and they had hog pens. I'm just telling you, this is small town rumors, right? That's what I've been told. So, and that the man that used to own it has passed. His wife is still around, and so we're hoping to get that place searched. The police keep saying that they're going to search it when it gets colder, but or cools off because it has something to do with the way the scent carries with the dogs. So we're just waiting for that to happen.
Oh my God, Bonnie,
Listen, I get it. I'm always like, these people have me messed up. Like, this is not okay that we've just been sitting on Foster's Hogs for 24 years. Like, I know, I know the police had to know about this place,
oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
This cannot be the only instance of them knowing, even though they're playing like, oh, I didn't know this person. Yeah, the fuck you did. Yeah, absolutely, you fucking did. You know exactly. And this cannot
right.
be the first time. And not to mention the fact. So I have a legitimate question. So did they actually act like this place didn't exist, first of all? And then, well, yeah, actually, let's start there because I have a follow-up question directly to that. So did they act like they knew that this place existed and like it was such a shock to them, like directly?
Uh, well, what they mainly did was acted like me asking any questions about it was an inconvenience for them. And so they basically told me that I try to say this without losing my mind, but they had better things to do with their time right now. That Danielle's case was so old that
Hmm.
they had better, more recent not better, but more recent cases that has better leads to follow up on. So, that's
So
go
this
ahead.
leads me to this follow-up question. And I say this in a non-nice way, but my legitimate question is if they don't know a whole lot about this place, how do they know that it stinks? Because because you stated that they're waiting on it to kind of cool down a little bit because, it throws off the smell, which I'm imagining what that actually would smell like. I can't even imagine it. I mean, I throw up every time my dog takes shit. I know what that smells like, but I'm imagining what this smells like, and you know what I mean? Like it's just not.
Well, the scent that they're talking about is like the scent that would
Yeah,
cadaver dogs would
right.
find. And so I've actually asked a couple people on Missy's told me that it's true that when it's because it's in Florida, it's a really humid climate.
Hmm.
And there's something about when it cools off, it's less humid that the dogs are able to work better. And I mean, who knows what it smells like? I don't know. Probably stinks. Can't tell him it stinks anyways, where she's went missing from. There's like an old paper mill. It smells dirty.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm just envisioning it in my head, and oof.
Yeah.
I'm imagining what that smells like, and I'm okay. We're gonna move past that. But your mom passed away in 2020,
Yep.
and I know you have a lot of mixed feelings about your mother's death. So walk us through that specific part whenever your mother passed, because it's like she took something with her, you know?
Yeah. So when had all of the information, from the hotel room where her picture was shown, and we found out she was kicked out for prostitution, I did report that to the police.
Mhm.
So that was about August or September of 2019. She passed in October of 2020 because she was squatting in a apartment on the third story. The police had been called to remove her. When they came in or were trying to come through, she jumped out of the window and died on impact. I asked for an
Mm.
autopsy report. Um, she had extremely high amounts of methamphetamines in her system. So, that's how she passed. It was frustrating to me that the cops still had never brought her in and really questioned her. Um, and a lot of my questions were, was she questioned about this in the past? Was she given a lie detector test? All of those things. And they could never answer those questions, never acted on it within the year and a couple months that she was still alive. So it was
Mhm.
a huge disappointment. If I wish I could send her my therapy bills, right? Like,
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I do have mixed feelings about it. I have lots of mixed feelings about it, but mostly I wish they would have questioned her better.
And that was gonna be my next thing is police never formally question your mom about Danielle's disappearance. And you stated that you do believe it is a mistake, and I have to agree. And God, I keep drawing this back to Deanna Merrifield, but I can't help it because there's so many like connecting pieces in this because they also never interviewed a lot of the family members that were there at the time that Deanna went missing, right? Or like any of her friends or anything like that. Like there's so many inconsistencies that just do not make fucking sense. And I feel like I could honestly go through the police academy, become a police officer, and do a way fucking better job because I've done this so long. I've done this work for so incredibly long, and I've heard so many of these stories. This is not something that is brand new to me. But every time I hear a story like this, I can't help but think the complicity and silence from these police departments to serve and to protect. Who are you serving and protecting besides your own? Like, legitimate question. Because if this was a law enforcement officer's daughter or son, or her other family member would have been solved, right? They would use every freaking resource they possibly could. We know that. Now, thinking about this, in April of 2024, you reached out to the county sheriff's office to ask about Danielle's case, and you were told that they put together a panel review of Danielle's case. And then they stated that by July 31st of 2024, they would have a new plan of action. You did not hear back from them, so you called in September of 2024 and was told the case was not an active investigation and that they could not provide additional information at that time. Why? In your thoughts and in your thought process, what is your thought on that? What do
Well,
you
my
think
thought is
happened
that
with that
I think that they never intended on doing it and they were just trying to
to get you to
make me
shut
go
up?
away. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Because so I had emailed them and said, "Hey, I I would like to talk to you about this. I know that your relationship with my mother was not great because she caused, of course, lots of turmoil between her and the sheriff's department over my sister's case. Um, I don't know what has gone on or why, but there have been leads that haven't been followed up in. I'm going to be in town on this date or around this time period. Can we have a meeting?" And so I flew back for this meeting. Um, and that's where they told me, oh, yeah, we're going to put a panel review together, like you said. The why as to the reaction at the end of the day and their response was, this is an active investigation, blah, blah, blah. We can't give you any information. I don't know. I believe it was because they just wanted me to be complicit and shut up.
And how exactly do they expect a sister that is close to the person that is missing? How do they expect you to just sit back and not say a damn thing? Like, who, my God, Bonnie, I can't even like begin to even think about what goes through your mind on a daily basis because there's so many inconsistencies and so many balls have been dropped. No pun intended. But I think about that, right? And I, what are you doing now? Like in this world, right? We know that there's still cases like this that are continuously going on that still have not been brought to justice. There's people like Jeffrey Epstein running rampant through our communities and other people like Robert and other places and other people, right? So what are you doing now? Like, how are you handling everything that's kind of happening right now? But also, what are you doing now to see about getting justice for Danielle and figure out what the hell happened that the detectives have never been able to figure out because they dropped the ball?
Yeah. So earlier this year, after the News Nation interview, we had several leads that came in. Um, and it was at that time, that Danielle's dad took over trying to communicate with the sheriff's department. But he's also received nothing but he said for a while there was a new detective every week. So he's getting passed around. He's getting frustrated. I'm getting frustrated. So the only thing that I can do is to continue doing what I am doing. We have the Nancy Grace interview coming out. Um, I'm, recording with you today. And after today, I plan to sit down and script my own podcast. Hopefully, we can get that out next year and just continuing to apply pressure and letting people know what all has happened in this case and who Danielle was and her story. Also, I bring attention to Robert Bassett because Robert Bassett is getting out of prison the end of this month. I use social media to let everyone know who he is, what he is up to, what he is capable of, and that's kind of where I'm at these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And and excited is not the correct term for this, but to hear your podcast. And, obviously there's some collaborative pieces that can happen with the Rise of Justice movement there and also, really amplifying the work that you are doing. So obviously, you have an open invite to continue collaborating. And because I feel invested in this story and in this case, because I feel that we can figure out what happened to Daniel. You just got to put all the pieces together and get some actual people that actually give a damn. Like you can piece it together. And just sitting here reading this research document again, shout out to Haley Gray Research for this incredible document. And it lays everything out so perfectly, and the details are literally here. And for police to sit here and they also have this exact same information, possibly even more, and they just blow it off like it's nothing. It's like, oh, this is just another runaway child. And I'm like, oh my God, how many times have we heard that? How many times, how many other stories do we need to have before they start to take it serious, right? How many more Danielle Bells? How many more Deanna Merrifields? How many more, like, God, there's so many. Ahmaud Arbery. Like, I think about that one too. And
Yep.
my
Alyssa
God,
Turney, which a lot of people know
yes,
about these days.
yes.
We can just keep going back to back, not only just with the process of them reporting
Mhm,
them as runaways, but let's talk about unsolved homicides where detectives aren't
mhm.
processing the evidence appropriately, or the fact of the waiting period on rape kits. I mean, the system itself is jacked up. That's why one reason why I refuse to be quiet, because it's an institutional problem. It's not just a Danielle Bell case problem, or the problem of Deanna Merrifield's family, or Armani Dante Morgan's aunt who's fighting to get the Dallas PD to, send evidence to a lab to get tested. It's multitudes of cases, different types of cases, different agencies. It is a issue across the entire United States. It's not okay. So, you know,
And and to put it lightly, it's beyond fucked up because families deserve justice, including you, including your family, including, you know, like you said, Deanna Merrifield and all these countless numbers of families. And it's a systematic failure. And, again, I want to say thank you for coming on the podcast today. And to anybody out there, Bonnie, where can they follow you on social media and follow your work that you were doing?
yeah, so I'm on TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook under Missing Child Danielle Bell. On Instagram, Danielle Bell Sister. So you can follow me any of those places.
Perfect. And is there anything else that you would like to share with anybody out there who may be listening?
Don't give up hope about, if you are the family member of a cold case, unsolved or missing, just don't give up hope. And also that I think the other thing I want to say is that, I think continuing forward, I don't want to just fight for my sister, but I want to fight for others that can't fight for themselves, the voiceless. So yeah.
Absolutely. And anybody out there who is listening, if you need to report child exploitation to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC, the phone number is 1-800 The Lost. That is 1-800 The Lost. Bonnie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I greatly appreciate you, and you please take care of yourself, okay?
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you.